It's another Thursday here on the West Virginia Call-In Show. So this is West Virginia Live Mondays, West Virginia Live Call-In Show on Thursdays. Episode 176, Eric. I have to take my shoes off to count these episodes. It's crazy. How are you doing today?
Doing good, buddy. How about you?
Good. I thought I'd explain this thumbnail. Old heads know who Scrooge McDuck is. One of the best characters. We might get monetized for it. I don't know. But, and then it goes, Dire Straits, money for nothing, chicks for free. Well, we're going to talk about it tonight, that nothing is free. And the fact that everyone that wants to hop in bed with corporate America and these equity firms, we're going to give our opinion later in the show about that. But, Eric, before we talk about that, let's start off the show talking about Ross Hodge. Some people are starting to flake out. What are your thoughts on the basketball coach?
I think it's understandable for people to be upset, and the flaking out. I get it. We've had three different games where we've had leads, and two of them where we've had big leads, and we've hit these spells where we get cold and we lose in the closing moments of the game. Um, you can't do that. Now, I think something that's easy to forget. This is year one, not only for him as a head coach, but I mean, we've got an entirely new team, got an entirely new staff. Um, yeah, we need to do better, but we kind of got spoiled because there were indications, especially with the win against Pitt, that this team, might be special. So yeah, completely understandable. I was as frustrated as anybody. That Ohio State game was rough for me. So what do you think, buddy?
Well, Ohio State game was like, I just, had a lump in your throat. You you kind of like choke down the tears because it just hit hard. The Clemson game, though, I think was a bigger disappointment because both games, Clemson and Ohio State, the Mountaineers clearly, when they have their shit together, are a dominant basketball team. But what happens is Huff is playing a position. If he's a two, everything's fine. If you had a decent, I don't know if the kid isn't decent or not, but they need some help at point guard. And when Huff steps in at point guard, there's some mistakes that are made. I think they just got to work out the kinks and they'll be fine. But I'm telling you guys, don't sell. If you don't sell the stock, buy. I think the Mountaineers are in okay shape. And we said the same thing about football last year. After the first four games, it was like panic, and then they beat Pitt. Or first three games, then they beat Pitt. So that segues into this part. So 2025, do you think it was a tough season or it was like a meh season for year zero?
So I'm going to be a little different from you. I'm going to put the Mountaineers on alert.
Okay.
We needed a big program win out of conference in the preseason to carry on our resume. We got one against Pitt. I don't know if it's enough. The idea that you have two losses where you had big leads, we're going to have to do at the very least 500 in the Big 12, and that's no small task this year. This is a ridiculously talented Big 12.
I think you're going to have to win a couple extra games in the Big 12 because of that Ohio State loss, especially if Ohio State just peters out in the Big 10, which I think they're middle of the pack.
I got to agree with you. If 500, you could have done 500 in the Big 12 and had two out of conference wins, and you'd have done fine. You'd have gotten in. But now, yeah, you're going to have a little extra something. But I also agree with you too. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. Do I think that can be done? I think Ross Hodge can do that. I do think we have a few roles we've got to figure out. I do have faith that Eagle staff's going to find his shooting rhythm. The guy's an NBA prospect still, but he's got to show it. And I think even if you have trouble with the one, if you've got two scorers in Huff and Eagle staff, to pull the defense out, I think we have Obieha can be effective underneath. So
Now, here, I watched recently the Allen Iverson special. I think it was on Netflix, maybe Prime. I get it all mixed up, but anyways, it's good. Google it. It's good. It's fantastic. I was at the first Big East Conference basketball game. I think it was Georgetown, if I remember correctly, but it was.
I was there too.
Allen Iverson was there also, and it was one hell of a game. So I can't remember who won, but it sparked me watching Allen Iverson show and how fantastic he was. Huff has flashes of AI. It doesn't have that killer crossover, doesn't have the handles, but same size, can score. Man, Huff is the real deal, leading the college football or college basketball, sorry, and threes. So yeah, there's some things that to be grateful, and especially with the holidays going, that West Virginia's basketball team, everyone seems to be healthy, and I think they're just a couple little nudges away from getting back on track. But enough about basketball. Let's talk football. The 2025 season, it's almost 2026. We're 3 weeks away. Now, we all know they only had 4 wins. And everyone's like everyone's looking for some positives, and then the recruiting blessing just landed on our lap. And it seems like West Virginia is in the top 25 as currently right now with the recruits they have. I think there's 49. Now, with those 49, you're going to have a lot of kids leaving. And that seems to be the daily trend. This guy's leaving, this next guy's leaving, and it's just hard to keep track. But one thing you might be able as a fan to rest easy this offseason is the schedule next year. And we talked a little bit about last week. The schedule this year is a lot easier. More manageable, I guess you should say, not easier. You don't know the dates. We didn't know last week. We knew what the home and away is. We went through each one last week and kind of gave you a feel. And I think we're at like 8-4, 9-3 for a good top tier 9-3. 7 wins would probably be the bottom. That's where we're at. But got a lot of changes in college football, and we're going to talk about the biggest change. And literally, I put this out this morning, this thumb, and I see that another podcast, I can't remember what it was, who was it, that put out something about these corporations trying to get their meat hooks on the Big 12, the SEC, etc. Did you watch any of those? I didn't have a chance. I was busy as hell today. So did you have a chance to watch any of those?
A little bit. I've been following along because this is setting the tone. Each year there's new progression towards the eventuality that this world of professional college athletics is going to be. And just following along and following the breadcrumb trail. Yeah, I've been following along.
Okay.
So there's a lot of talk about private equity and private credit. Yeah. There's talk, and the difference being private equity. You're buying into a partnership, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
So the notion then being, you're not necessarily getting ownership of the program, but the notion of like there's always been the official this of the program, the official that of the program. You're getting a lot of that, but then there's things that surround it as well, and that's where the thing that I'd seen that I really liked with the Big 12, because the Big 12 is a little different in that we're looking at private credit.
Right. And how does that, my first question that comes to my mind is, universities are tax exempt. They're nonprofit. Introducing investors, how does that change the educational mission? I mean, and then of course each one of these state schools has some sort of legislative intervention at the state level. I just there's so many complex I'm just not smart enough to understand. I have some concerns that I wrote down, but I don't know, makes me scratch my head. It just gives me the itchy feeling, like, this doesn't feel right. Itchy, itchy.
I completely agree with you. It feels like you're shaking hands with the devil.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, these equity firms want to make money, so they're going to give you this money up front, and then in a couple years, they're like, okay, let's start getting our dividends. They want 15 to 25%, 20%. The strategic risk, because you're going to have performance pressure, and you think there's pressure now on these coaches to perform. You have an investment firm demanding revenue growth and also player NIL monetization strategies that kind of can support that. How does that mirror with the student being a student athlete? I don't know. I don't know. It seems like a novelty, like just like some sort of. It does not seem like these things can work in tandem and move in the same direction with the same mission, I guess you could say.
it is, and that's what I'm watching for is where does this land? Because there's some things here that really aren't that different. Um, you've had things like Boosters Club, whether it's in our case the MAC, the Mountaineer Athletics Club, where you had boosters that supported the sports programs, and so there's some things there that are very similar. And you've got this new blue gold enterprise, and so it's always been a notion that there is a barrier between the university as an educational entity and the athletics program. And so I think we're going to see eventually that gap is going to it's got to grow. There's going to have to be a stronger boundary there because you're right. How do you have nonprofit organizations
Yeah,
being funded and generating profit? Um, Something's got to give.
yeah, and
And, and
even
I and I don't know where it lands, by the way. I don't
and
know either. I'm not that smart either.
here's another huge concern. We have boosters right now that are given lots of money. Okay,
Hmm.
if they lose any sort of stake, so even a minority stake by these equity firms can influence your operational decisions. So you're going to take away the power of Rich Rod and say Ken Kendrick, who's probably donating a lot, or you know Pat Mack. I mean, are these investors going to gain like an informal veto power over you know how they generate revenue, how they charge, what they charge for beers, media strategies? Where is the delineation going to be?
That
Maybe I'm
that's it.
overthinking this.
Sorry.
Maybe I'm overthinking this. I don't know.
No, I don't think you are. I think these are the questions that every sports program and every member of a conference is asking these same questions. And for folks like us who are on the outside, it's very disconcerting. You just don't know what the future of your beloved team is going to look like. My understanding is with these private equity or the private credit um, partnerships, there's a lot of there's a lot of necessary conducting of business, excuse me, that has always taken place and always will take place.
Yeah.
And so the notion of you start to partner with folks who you can mutually, there's a symbiotic relationship there, such that both the creditor and the university, well, the sports program, can benefit. And so there's money being exchanged for that. And so as money is being given by one, that partner is also receiving because they're getting the funds for, say, I heard the specific example of travel. There was a really nice piece that Tony Caridi had done with the Blue Gold Group Enterprises today, and I think uh, it's part of the United Bank playbook, I believe.
Yeah.
But if you take that model, everybody who knows someone who has a small business, and that small business teams up with other small businesses, and typically they give each other references or they just send business to each other. That's what this is sounding like, but just on a much larger scale. It's just that these partners aren't necessarily giving us business, they're giving us dollars. So that model I can understand a lot. The private equity thing, to me, that's something that concerns me because, again, it seems like like we were talking about before the show. If you're getting money from somebody, the way private equity works is they get dividends or straight out ownership value, so that eventually they can sell a product, which is what happens in professional sports. We saw that just recently with the Penguins. I think it was they just exchanged hands. They were sold. I don't know that that's going to be where we land, but how can you not think that's where we're going to? How can you not? I mean, it's got to go somewhere. So I'm
About
sorry. Do you know anything more about this?
Well, I'm just going to use an example. You talk about small businesses. Let's just talk about food. Everybody eats. Jersey Mike's was bought by one of these, big companies, and the quality went down. They're not as good. When I go there, it's just not as good. Okay. I mean, no, it's not Jersey Mike's. Jersey Mike's is about to get bought out, but Jimmy John's was bought out and it went to shit. Okay, that's my point there. But uh, Fiona has a great point. What happens if some schools make money and the other ones don't perform? And when you have a competitive environment where only so many schools or so many wins to go around, this isn't like, oh my gosh, the Big 12 can win every game because they play each other. They can't. So you're kind of screwing your partner because you beat them by 40 points. You see what I'm saying? It's not set up to be money generating and beneficial. There's always going to be a Rutgers or a Temple or a team that just, or a Vandy. But now Vandy's starting to get a little bit more money because their alum are a little smarter and have more money to kind of donate. So it's kind of like evening out. But I'm using those references from years ago. Afton also says the Big 12 teams get $72 million a year for TV rights to football and basketball, and doesn't even seem to be adjusted to the fair market value. They're going to renegotiate. The Big 12, I understand, negotiates the basketball and the football separately, which I think is beneficial. But Afton also says Power 5 schools. Afton is a big brain, one of those big brain folks. 2018 Power 5 schools made 19.5% of the revenue from tickets. Non-Power 5 schools 7.9%, D2 1%, D3 0.6%. So that tells me that the NHL is an organization that makes a lot of their revenue from their attendance. So with that, and you're looking at that from an analyst perspective, these smaller Division I schools only get less than 8%. So you're going to have to come up with creative ways to make money, and it's not going to be through ticket sales. Most of these programs in college football are not Power 4. They fall under the Division I, which is 8%, Division II, let's just say 2% and 1%. So with that, how do they pay for their travel? Right now we're in a spending pattern that cannot be sustainable. It's not fiscally sustainable. The only reason these other programs, for example, football props up other sports. But Eric, what are your thoughts? Sorry, I went on a rampage.
That's all right. It was a great rabbit hole to explore. I enjoyed it. First of all, Afton, as always, very impressive. I don't know what you do for a living, Afton, but you're probably really good at it. Fiona asked an excellent question as well, and so I'm gonna jump to Afton's comment, and then I'm gonna jump over to Fiona's. So the notion that it used to be ticket sales were huge, and that's where back in like the 70s and the 80s, bowls loved WVU because we sold tickets, and that was before you had a lot of TV coverage on these bowls. I remember it was a lot of times you would have to listen to the radio to catch a bowl game, unless it was a big bowl. Those days are kind of over. And you're muted, buddy.
I'm just saying, or the bowls were one of the few things that were televised because it was blacked out because they want you to go to the game.
Exactly. So let's fast forward from that era a little bit. Oh well, then no wonder you're so smart. You're always reading and telling people to be quiet. Which thank you for not telling us to be quiet. But fast forward to early 2000s. WVU starts attracting a national fan basis. Why? Because we were the Thursday night ticket. We were the Thursday night and Friday night ticket. We were the best game in town. And so the country, who loves an underdog, who doesn't love an underdog story, came to know WVU, and we attracted and developed a loyal fan base across the country. So all of a sudden, that local ticket didn't mean as much, and that was a struggle. But eventually, you moved into TV markets versus ticket sales, and so that's where I'm going to jump from. Fiona's point is not lost. TV revenue is a lot more these days than ticket sales. And I'm going to jump over to Fiona's comment, which ties into yours, because you specifically, I started grinning because you took the team right out of my mouth. Rutgers. Rutgers is a program that, even with Shiano there, they're still Rutgers. And let's just leave it at that. Don't mean any disrespect by that, but them competing in the Big Ten is a tall ask, at least in the football. But they have a tremendous amount of interest because their fans are rabidly loyal. And so the notion of you can keep that fan base interested such that your TV numbers look great, you're going to stay in the hunt. And that's what this is all about. This is all about putting a product on the field in the form of a sporting team that it maintains interest. You don't even have to win games. You just have to maintain interest. And so that's really where we're at. And as obscure and non X's and O's as that discussion is, that's really what's driving a lot of these decisions and forming the future of college athletics. And that's why I'm trying to follow along, because I want to see where this goes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we land with this. It's looking a lot more like we're looking like an unregulated professional sports program, and at some point the NCAA is going to have to step in and protect the product.
Yeah, there already is like the Protect Act, a federal proposal called the Protect Act that would ban like some of this nonsense. But I'm gonna give you like three simple bullets I have written down here that just hit everybody. So we can get into the minutia and the legal stuff, and that's all stupid. It comes down to fans, alumni, fans, and students. They might perceive this as being like a commercialization of something that was pure, and the undermining of the core values of why I love college sports more than the NFL. I just do. Now, it's different now because we don't get them as long. We don't have you get to develop that relationship, seeing them at the spring game, and then over a couple of years develop. It just doesn't happen. But I still have that idealistic view that college sports are still amateurs, even though they make money, a couple million. Now, with that, like I said, there's perception of the professionalism. Okay. And when you increase the private investment in these athletes, they'll start to look more like G League, NBA, or the NFL light. And it's gonna, like I said, it's just you're gonna risk the engagement you have as a fan or the alumni. They're gonna criticize it. So the final thing that I'd like to talk about is the inequity. Right now, there's the haves and have-nots, but there's it seemed to kind of get smaller, the gap, because the NIL, if a second string guy's not playing and he's talented, he can move. Where Penn State in the 90s used to have three guys, three deep, that would start at West Virginia. Okay. So, but as this concentration of capital moves around in these agreements, it's going to erode the competitiveness of this of these conferences, and I think it's going to weaken the conferences. But that's all I got to say. I mean, it's I think it's I don't know. They say they want it for 5 to 7 years, but I don't think that's responsible either. But
Well, I
anyway,
got a couple questions for you, buddy. Because
shoot.
there's some bold statements in there, and
Right,
that's good because what we're trying to do is figure this out. There's a
right.
lot more going on here than we fully understand, and that's I think across the board for most average fans. So you said something's going to last 5 to 7 years. What is going to last five to
Now,
seven years?
when I was doing some research, they said the first proposals for the SEC was like, well, hey, generally this is going to last 5 to 7 years, and then we're going to develop into this type. So there's like a maturation process of how these equity firms want to utilize this. So they're going to get the money that you can use in NIL or facilities or however you want to use it. There's no regulation on that, but who's to say one team doesn't use it on facilities, they use it on players? I mean, like you said, it's the Wild West. But in 5 to 7 years, the expectations are still going to be the same return on investment.
So that's it. They're looking for return on investment 5 to 7 years, whatever that looks like, and whatever the expectations are.
Right. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
it would be like, okay, we're going to invest in Ford, Chevy, Toyota, and Hyundai. And Hyundai is like, we're just going to do straight fusion, cold fusion. Well, it doesn't freaking exist. There's a big freaking egg that was laid. And then you have Toyota saying, well, we're just going to do hybrid only. Okay. And then you have GM saying, well, we're just going to do gas and make V8s. And Ford's like, we're just going to make trucks and nothing else. So they all have different ways of doing it. There's no right answer, but some are way off the reservation. I'm just saying there's no common goal, even though the end result, the common goal is that equity firm, if that gives money to the SEC or the Big 12, they want 20% on their investment. It's just very unlikely. I don't understand how the rationale. It just seems like they're herding cats. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place.
So you said too that you felt as though we were going to erode the competition level in the conferences. Does that mean we're going to have more parity across the board with schools? Because
Well,
you'd use the example that like Penn State used to have three deep. We could have taken a lot of their second and third teamers, and they would have started at WVU, which
yeah,
that
yeah.
is the way it used to be.
Now, because we have that money, we could do that. What they're saying is you can use that money for NIL so you can get those players. However, you're still going to have teams that are going to have losing records.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like a franchise where every Jersey Mike's you want to have great subs. And, at the end of the day, it's like a Jersey Mike's open up across the street from another Jersey Mike's. They're going to take business away. There's only so much revenue to be made right now because you have the NFL. You're going to start competing with the NFL. It just seems like it's really aggressive, and I think it's too aggressive. There's more questions than answers, and this show right here, it's not to give information; it's to make you think. I want you to come watch this video with Eric and me and be like, shit, I didn't think of that, and do research on your own and come back on another show and say, Shane, you're full of shit. This is what I found. That's what we need to do as fans, Mountaineer fans. We need to come together and figure this the hell out because it doesn't seem like anybody has an answer. From guys that my neighbor's a lawyer. I ask him about it. He's like, oh man, that's some complex stuff. And you go to a football coach, ask them. They're like, well, they're starting to pay kids in high school like McKeesport and Aliquippa. They're getting a little bit of here and there. So with that, like okay, Fiona, I want to read this. Put a salary cap on all teams. I love that. Do revenue sharing so that every TV dollar is split evenly between universities. I agree with the salary cap, but the revenue sharing it should be based on viewers. Like West Virginia usually gets a lot of eyeballs on TV sets, so it'd help West Virginia if it's based on views because they're always in the top tier of watchable football in the Big 12. Just because West Virginia fans are all over the place and they make time to watch it because they're this the type of fans they are. But Let's see what Leo says. Leo, you've been hiding out on us. I also want to think it'll weaken some conferences. Absolutely, Leo. It's going to cause conferences to fold. This is going to push everything into a super conference with maybe 2 or 3 collective corporate sponsors, or that are trying to monetize off of and there's money to be made because college football is still very popular. This playoff is making a shitload of money. Starting this weekend, tomorrow, you're going to have playoff games. And I'll tell you what, before I might not watch every bowl game. I might catch a little bit of the Rose Bowl, a little bit of the Sugar Bowl. I'm watching every damn bowl game now because I'm that interested. I do a podcast, for crying out loud. Eric, I'm all over the place. Help me out.
Buddy, you are all over the place. But it's one of those topics that it's easy to be all over the place because it's fascinating, and there's so many different aspects that when you start running down an avenue, you don't know where it's going to go. So just some food for thought. I think it could make some conferences, because you covered a lot of ground. Some conferences, I don't know that they'll get weaker necessarily, but you're going to steal talent from the haves for those who can poach those players and pay them, because whereas they're second string at a larger program, they could be a starter at a smaller program, as long as that smaller program has enough funds to bring them. And you've already seen this happen. Quite honestly, there's a lot of poaching going on from team to team, because whereas the players can't be in communication, the agents are, and everybody knows.
That's
sorry, go ahead.
Like that's like wiping your ass with a hoop, as my grandma would say. Like that makes no god darn sense. But
well, so the idea that you see players entering the transfer portal, fortunately, transparently, I'm not opposed to that, because I am a fan that if you have a player that things aren't working well in a program for them, and it's the kind of thing that, look, if they decided to stay a season and maybe it'd work out for them there, that in the following season, I think that player would be wise to do that. And I think that eventually that's where you're going to settle down and see these models go towards. But also, if you find a player that goes into a program and maybe it's just not going to work out for them, but they could take their talents elsewhere and do well for themselves, I wish them all the luck in the world. Go. So in that aspect, I think it's good. So you may be stripping away some talent, especially some depth from certain bigger programs. I get that. But I think overall, you're going to see more parity, because we're seeing schools like JMU, they rose up pretty quick. Old Dominion had a great win. Smaller schools can now start competing if they have the resources and have the means to bring those to their collectives. And
I'm going to back it up real quick. Look
Sure.
at Boise State. They were the outlier. They were the only team that was competitive, beating Oklahoma back in 2007 with that Statue of Liberty play. Now you have, Ohio beating West Virginia. You have Appalachian State beating Michigan, 10 years ago. But that is more common now. James Madison's beating people. Tulane's upsetting people. Like there's like, you're so right. There's more parity. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. You mentioned too the notion of the influence, in particular, if you have private equity, and will those boosters, those who are contributing, have a voice? I think that's already present now. Quite honestly, I think we've mentioned here in the program before. I think Rich Rod has had a lot of support for him and the way he coaches, and people believe in him. And so those who are big boosters, they're more comfortable contributing to the program because they think it's going to pay off. This is just an expansion of that.
But that's going to go away, Eric, isn't it? That's going to go away if you have a corporation weighing in. You're going to have boosters kind of stepping back, saying, "Hey, I don't have as big of a say in this. I don't want to put $5 million towards this program. I'll give you $1 million."
I disagree.
Okay.
So here's why I disagree. I'll get to the other part. I'm gonna try to make this quick. We talked about two things. The main thing is you've got to keep interest in your program. Kirk Herbstreit said that decades ago. You got to be relevant. And whether that's with wins or whatever, you got to be relevant. Um, there are certain programs that don't have as many wins, although WVU has more wins, considering that we don't have a national championship. We're usually in the top 25 programs in the country in football anyway, in terms of total number of wins. Last few years, to be honest with us, I want honest with everybody, have hurt us, but we're still probably in the top 25. That being said, we're working our way back to being more relevant. You've got to stay relevant to stay in the collective that is your power conference. So that's how your schools like your Vanderbilts, your Rutgers, your Wake Forests, your Northwesterns, that's how they stay in there. And I love the comment you made, because the Northwestern, the cry against Northwestern, if you're a Big Ten member, is, hey, Northwestern's making just as much money as we are, and we're the ones bringing all the interest. We're the ones winning the games, going to the bowl games, competing for a national championship. I think that's a very important part. And there's going to have to be some way when it comes to figuring out monies from different revenue sources that you factor that in, because that's important. Otherwise, you have folks who are kind of just, how should I say, they're on the gravy train and they're not bringing much to the table. You've got to bring interest.
It's the gravy train. They're just eating.
So the other thing I was going to say is the other half of that equation. If you're a conference, I lost my Christmas tree back there. The other thing I was going to mention is the thing that brings in a lot of revenue and keeps you relevant is which conference you're in. And so the notion that the conference, comparatively speaking, is like a YouTube channel.
Right.
They are somebody who they are bringing a product, Big 12 basketball, football, whatever it is. And people want to watch, provided that the product is good. And so the notion that it's in the best interest of the partners to not interfere overly with the programs, as long as the programs are being successful in generating interest. At that point, I think it'll work out well, because if the program is winning, the partners are winning. And it's a matter of, like we're saying, because it's great to say Mountaineer football brought to you by the folks at ABC Travel or whatever travel. Because when the Mountaineers travel, they travel with you know who travel company. Now, if you got a lot of interest in WV sports athletics, the fact that you get to say that to a bigger audience, if you're that travel agency, you win. You win when the Mountaineers win. And so when things lose interest, that's where I would agree with you. You might have people saying, hey, we see you're having some problems. We'd like to help you with that. Because now if the program hurts, they hurt.
Yeah, and I think the difference is equity firm versus corporate sponsor. They have to define the difference, because an equity firm wants to generate revenue based off of their investment, where a corporate sponsor wants to get noticed based off of the popularity of the program or the product. But
it depends on how these things are set up, and that's the thing. We don't know. We don't get to read these contracts.
No, and I'm not opposed to NIL, guys. I'm not opposed to I just think the poaching, they're talking outside of their mouth. They say they can't take players or talk to players, but that's happening. That needs to be kind of regulated. Also, they need to narrow the window and say, hey, from this time to this time that you're with this program, or even sign 2-year contracts and have them say, listen, if you take this money, you can't leave for this amount of time. I know it's like if you pay me to do work on a house, you pay me 50% now and 50% when I'm done. That's usually the way it works. I don't know how these NILs are set up. I haven't been privy to any of them. It's like a closed guarded secret. Lots of podcasters are out there picking, trying to find out exactly what's going on. I talked to parents of two last year. We interviewed a parent of two Division I football players, and they basically said they present this to them, but they didn't get into the detail how it was divvied up. So that's what we need to know. We need to regulate this to protect the players and protect the school, because right now the players have more protection than the school does. But to close the show, Eric, you watched a fantastic high school talent straight out of Morgantown. Can you tell us a little bit about this stud?
I love this shift back to the game and the players, less about the business. So went to a number of football games, local football games. Love local football, even if you don't know the kids playing necessarily directly. Went to a number of them with a buddy of mine. We played football together, and saw a young man playing for a local team, Morgantown High School. And I remember watching that. You can see the kids who stand out, that game in, game out, they are noticeably better. Uh, and there was a young man that I was watching that I thought, I don't know where he's playing next year, but he's going to play at the next level.
Yeah.
And that was the quarterback, Maddox Twig. Now he's a 6'2", 200, 205, depending on who you read. Quarterback, plays for the local Morgantown High team. I remember thinking, what why do they always run? They always run. Morgantown High's had a long history of always running. And then you'd see they had a number of great backs. They had a tremendous offensive line. It's like, okay, they don't have to throw. They can run all over these whoever they're playing. And they did. And that included the quarterback. But then you saw them throw and you thought, they still need to throw more, because the kid could do it all. And so he's had in this season, if my numbers are correct from researching, because it's a little difficult to find numbers on him, over 3,000 total yards this season, 2,000 through the air, 26 touchdowns, threw at a 66 completion rate, tremendous accuracy. I was very impressed. Was pretty smart with the football. I think he only had 4 interceptions. Rush for 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards. Had I think 18 touchdowns. Now these might be career numbers. It's hard to say, but the thing that really stuck out in my mind was his postseason play. They ended up winning the 4A state championship, and in 4 games, he posted 1,000 total yards of offense, 19 touchdowns. That's insane. Championship game, he had 316 total yards of offense, and he was injured.
And 4
he sat out.
Yeah.
What's that?
And 4 touchdowns.
And 4 touchdowns. Incredibly gifted young athlete. Seems to be a very good young man. And then I found out he's a sophomore.
Yep.
What's that?
2028 is when he's coming out.
Now he's just started. I mean, people have just started to notice him. Marshall offered him before the season began. He's only got 4 offers on the table that I'm aware of: Jackson State, Marshall, Kent State, and WVU. Now he's going to get more attention, because even though WVU is a small, or West Virginia is a small state, he competed. We have a number of different programs here that are, perennial powerhouses, and that's it. Typically Martinsburg and Spring Mills is another one. They had tremendous games. Both, I mean, those were great games. Those teams are not having a down year.
Yeah.
Very close, but he largely impacted those games. Now it's a team game, so tremendous team. They have a number of kids who made All-State. He actually made All-State first team as a sophomore. That's quite an accomplishment. And I tell you, the thing that was really impressive, he won the J.R. House Award this year. That's the first time a sophomore has won it.
Wow.
And that's the J.R. House Award is for the best quarterback in the state. This young man's just getting started. And don't get me wrong, stocks, it's just like stock values. They can go up, they can go down. So I'm hoping the best for this young man, that he works hard and continues to elevate his stock. But from what I saw, like in particular in the state championship game, playing injured like that, he wanted to be in. He played on both sides of the ball, and they only took him out of the game when you saw that they needed to put him, try to give him a break so
Yeah.
that he could come back in the last series. So that'll be great to see if he is someone who I would think is a great dual quarterback threat. QB hit list has him ranked, or not ranked, scored as a 93 out of 100 as a quarterback. And again, that's as a sophomore. His strengths were pocket presence. He's got a very cool head. His footwork was tremendous, and throwing on the run, which if you're going to be a dual threat, that's something you got to be able to do.
No, you're right. That's great news, and the fact that West Virginia offered them early, hopefully help them later when everybody else is buying for this kid. Additional news: Mountaineer Paul, I think, was the first guy that I saw this. Jay Boulware, Kentucky's former running backs coach, is set to replace Porter as the running backs coach at West Virginia. So, initially, the Mountaineers rehired in the interim head coach Chad Scott, and then he left. Chad Scott left, and then they brought Porter in, and now we're getting this guy is. They can't say enough great things about this guy. I don't know. We'll see. With the running back talent that's coming, this guy is supposed to be a hell of a coach. Jay Boulware is supposed to be top-notch offensive minds. Really great at developing that skill position. So we'll see exactly what happens. That was news of about 4 or 5 hours ago on Mountaineer Paul's show. On this show, we're the Voice of College Football. We have like 40 Voice of College Football shows. I don't poo-poo other Mountaineer shows, though, because this show, I pull the information from everything, and we just talk about it. And I want to thank Leo, Fiona, Afton. Who else is on here? Anybody who's been on here this past hour. We're going to be here every Monday. Next week's a holiday, so we're just going to do a Monday show, so no Thursday show. Enjoy the time with your families. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Festivus to the rest of us. Eric, you like Festivus, right?
I have some problems with you, and I want to talk about them. Yes, of course I love Festivus.
Yes. So, anyways, guys, we are literally, getting ready to get after it for 2026. 2 weeks away from a new year. If you did catch us live, which I do appreciate folks watching live, guys, this conversation we had is just to ask questions, give information, make you think. We're not telling you what's happening. This is more of me and Eric just trying to figure out what the hell's going on, because we don't know what the hell's going on in college football. It's a hot mess, and we love college football. We don't want to see it ruined, and I don't want to see the Mountaineers, who are just getting traction, getting into the spot where they need to be successful, for more extraneous noise to cause them to not succeed. So, Eric, if I don't see you, have a Merry Christmas. Everyone in chat, Merry Christmas. Eric, anything for the chat?
I just want to thank everybody. It's I know we're not quite done with this year, but it's been a great run, and the contributions from folks in the chat, that's what makes this show. Like you said, Shane, we're just a couple of guys who are talking about the news that we see, kind of trying to wrap things up and consolidate it all and bring it forward. And quite honestly, the contributions from the folks in the chat, tremendous, because you and I will do research and we'll try to find some numbers and things to discuss. The stuff that people bring to the show, tremendous. Thanks everybody, and we wish you the very best this holiday season.
And this is true. Raising tide raises all ships. So best wishes. Pepperoni roll kisses. That's kind of gross. But hey, I'm making pepperoni rolls this week. So anyway, take care, Mountaineer fans. And we're going to let you go with the great state of West Virginia flag to see you out. And Merry Christmas. We'll see you Monday Christmas week. So